Hi everybody, I hope you're well. I don't know if you were able to join us for worship yesterday. If not, there's a link on our website and on our Facebook page. But there are a lot of important points in the text from John chapter 20, verses 19 to 31, that I could not fit into a sermon of acceptable length. You might say that sermons are kind of like movies in the sense that a lot of material ends up on the cutting room floor. So I thought I would pick up one of the clips from yesterday and explore verse 23, which is probably the most difficult in that text to interpret. It's where Jesus says, "If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. And if you retain the sins of any, they are retained." I probably can't do it justice even in these few minutes, but let me give you one way to understand that passage. Now, as is true with any Bible verse, you can't take it out of its context and expect to fully understand its meaning. So if we back up a little bit, we learn three important things that help us in our interpretation. The first is that Jesus is talking to all of his disciples. In verse 19, where it says that the disciples were meeting together behind locked doors, the word for disciples in Greek is the general word that means follower, a follower of Jesus. It's not the specific word that designates the 12, or at this point, the 11 disciples. The second thing is that in verse 21, Jesus sends his followers into the world to continue the work that God had sent Jesus into the world to do. And that work could be summarized as making God known and inviting people to be reconciled to God in love and forgiveness. The third thing is in verse 22, where Jesus gives the Holy Spirit to the disciples. So when you take those three facts together, it shows us that Jesus is talking about the mission of the Spirit-filled church, or the community of faith. And that mission is to reveal God to the world and to invite people into a relationship with the God of limitless love. It's in accepting or rejecting that relationship with God that sins are forgiven or retained. In other words, when you accept God's love, then you accept God's forgiveness. But if you reject God's love, then you're cutting yourself off from experiencing forgiveness. So when Jesus says, if you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven, or you retain the sins of any, they are retained, he is not making his followers the judges of moral character. He's not making his followers the gatekeepers of forgiveness. Instead, he's giving us the responsibility to bear unceasing witness to God's love, so that when people hear our words and see our actions, they have an opportunity to know God and to receive his forgiveness. Now that's a big responsibility, and it's an honor that he would entrust it to us. Thankfully, because of our relationship with him, we are forgiven even when we don't get it right. So those are my thoughts for today. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again tomorrow.